Babe, so it's not very often that you get the partner of a narcissist willing to share her knowledge about how to navigate conflict with a narcissist like me and come out the other side unscathed. This video is pretty cool. We're going to cover some very special tactics, some tactics that work across all relationships, so it's helpful for anybody, but some specific nuances that will help you kind of sidestep the landmines that exist when trying to communicate your feelings to a narcissist. We're also going to cover some red flags. If you see these red flags, they could be detrimental to your relationship. And along the way, we have a whole bunch of to-dos and not to-dos that I think would make any relationship helpful, but especially if you're trying to navigate expressing your emotions to a narcissist. So here we go. It's important to say that this message isn't for everyone. In fact, we're not trying to say that narcissists can run free and that it's your responsibility to solve all the fights. I actually think that narcissists are a huge problem. And if you are kind enough and you have it in your soul and you have enough energy to try and make it work with them or help them come to a realization and help them heal, here's some helpful information. And if you're done, you're exhausted, your narcissist has made your life hell, we are all for transitioning out of that relationship. And we'll even talk in here about certain points where it makes sense if they're not doing these things, huge red flags to look for in a relationship with the narcissist. So expectations are super high, babe. So everyone wants you to teach them everything. Yeah. So we actually just wanted to start by just having a fight. We're going to put together like a fight scenario. And do you want to tell more about that?
Yeah, this is actually a fight from our life. I think everybody should know that this is an actual fight that we had.
Have a lot.
We've had more than once this specific fight.
Yeah.
I think something important to know is that I'm a highly sensitive person. Sure. So our relationship is really interesting. And when
You don't have to apologize.
I'm not apologizing.
Okay.
I'm saying it's interesting because what came up when we were planning this message together was this really strong feeling in me to protect the partners of narcissistic people because of my experience and wanting to make sure that because I believe that not only are there a lot more sensitive people out there than we realize just in general. I think empathic and sensitive people are especially drawn to narcissists because they have this really strong need to fix and help. Yeah. And they're especially empathetic. So they might see behaviors that society is like, that's not okay. And sensitive, empathic people are like, I just want to love you. I want to nurture you like my little puppy, baby bunny thing and make you better. And so I love that you brought in that caveat of this is not a fix-all. And I think what's cute about this little fight that we're putting out is it displays a bit about my sensitivity. So some people might say, I would never fight about this, but I think me as a sensitive person, it comes up a lot.
Yeah, totally.
And it's a really good example of how someone who's highly sensitive and someone who deals with narcissistic tendencies can hopefully find an in-between.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, let's do it. Let's imagine we just got back from the party.
So let's tell them what the fight is about.
No, let's just actually do it.
No.
Okay, go.
So this scenario that we're about to act out, we're going to give a little backstory. The example we're using is that the partners in this scenario, it's me and Jordan, went to a party or a social gathering together. And in this social gathering, there were some feelings that came up. We're going to express what feelings came up in, first of all, maybe not the most ideal way to communicate, but what commonly gets communicated between couples. So this first example is not meant to be the way that we're suggesting you communicate. This is just the way that people most commonly do communicate in different situations, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
We get back. I'm making porridge.
We're coming back from the party?
Yeah, I'm doing something. I'm over here in my world. Something about me.
Well, I think in this scenario, What's hard is that I don't know that I would directly confront you.
Okay.
It's more like I'm being quiet. So maybe we're driving home
That's
in the
probably
car.
true. You're quiet. and
Yeah,
like,
we're driving home in the car and you're talking about the
Yeah.
party. Oh man, that was so much fun. Everyone was giving me so much attention.
great, let's go. Me. I'm just talking about myself. Me. And I look over and I'm like, hey, are you okay? What's wrong?
Well, what's wrong is that you ignored me the entire time.
When? What are you talking about?
The whole time at the party, you were very busy with everybody else but me.
Babe, I don't think that happened. I came up to you at the beginning and then I came up to you in the middle and I came up to you at the end. Like, what are you even talking about?
It's not about if you came up to me or not. It's about the fact that at no point in that gathering did I feel like I mattered to you or that you were proud to be with me, because you didn't spend any time with me the whole time and I was all alone the whole time.
Oh, so because I don't come to you at a party and talk to you constantly, I'm the worst partner ever?
No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that it hurt my feelings because you were ignoring me.
Okay, we can time out there. The fight's obviously devolved. I'm now saying I'm the worst and completely discrediting everything you're saying.
You're probably saying I'm too sensitive somewhere in there.
Yeah. So, okay. So why was that the worst thing ever?
Well, I think what we've learned from experience is that anytime I'm trying to communicate my feelings in a way that is posed as, or even could be perceived as, a criticism, it's always going to go downhill.
Yeah.
So, for example,
100% of the time with a narcissist, if you point at them, it's defenses pop up. But keep going.
yeah. So in that specific example, I said, you were ignoring me. Mm-hmm. You were interested in everybody else but me. It was obvious you didn't care about me. Those are the phrases I'm using to describe my inner experience. Now, everybody listening will probably be like, yeah, he shouldn't ignore you. And that's probably true. But I've learned that I can communicate in ways that get me where I want a lot more quickly. And so if what we want is to be understood, and what we want is to see change down the road, see more connection. So in this example, if I want us to connect during parties and not to feel ignored, then I need to be able to focus less on being right than being understood by you. And because narcissists have so many barriers to receiving any criticism or perceived criticism because of strong layers of shame that cause defensiveness and reactivity, usually cutting right to the jugular or making an accusation isn't super effective in reaching your goal.
Yeah, totally. And I think that applies to any sort of argument. I mean, it's really good tact to focus on how you feel. And I maybe want to give a little bit of the evolution of our stuff a little bit. We read this book called Nonviolent Communication, and absolutely amazing. And the basic premise is the way you can solve all your fights is to connect on a heart-to-heart level of what's actually happening. So not being critical, but saying how you feel. And on the other side for the receiver is to not be defensive, but to listen. And, we put some of that into practice, and I think that was helpful. But the problem is the nuance to being with the narcissist is that if you are vulnerable with the narcissist on what you're feeling, if you, show how you feel, then, well, maybe we can back this up and just...
I think giving an example of
we'll just
what
jump into the
vulnerability
example.
looks like.
Yeah, let's just jump into an example. Running again, we're driving, and let's do this nonviolent communication, which is still an amazing approach, but we and how it's better. Yeah. So driving, me. Babe, what's wrong?
I'm just feeling a little sad.
Oh, what do you mean you're sad? How come?
I'm just noticing that after leaving that party, I'm feeling really insecure about myself.
Whoa, what happened? Why?
I think that I get a lot of security in our relationship when I feel like we look like a power couple in social settings. It feels like you're showering me with love and affection, and you're kind of on my arm the whole time. And I guess that I needed more of that type of connection from you than I thought. And so maybe I didn't communicate how much I needed that. So I'm not trying to make you a bad guy. I'm just saying that I'm left feeling a little insecure after the party and wondering if we're really connected.
Well, yeah, I'm sorry you're feeling that way. Maybe you should have just told me that you needed that.
Yeah, I think it's hard because I've tried to express it in the past when I say, hey, or make sure that we connect in the party, and I hope that we spend more time together this time. And I feel like it's a little hard for me to know how to explain that to you without hurting your feelings or making you feel defensive.
I guess I can get defensive, but like, why didn't you just tell me? Like, I'm frustrated that you're so sad now. I'm trying to pull back into like what eventually I think it still oftentimes devolves into the narcissist feeling defensive for how I made you feel. I feel shame that I hurt you. I feel, and so I started to blame it on her right out of the gate. I was like, well, why didn't you tell me? You know,
Yeah.
and
I
that's
didn't
a very
know.
narcissistic thing. I didn't know. And I'm being defensive instead of being empathetic, which, you know, I think nonviolent communication, had I read that better, and I still do think it did help. Like, I think that literally every time we'd have a fight, I'd go reread the book, like go on a walk and listen to the book. I'm like, that's where I messed up. I should have been empathetic. Now, one great thing you can do is you and your narcissist read this book and say, this is now the ground rules of our relationship. And I think you can get really far, because I can still even remember times that I reread the book and was like, oh, I wasn't empathetic. I started saying, you know, what about you? What about you? So I think that in that scenario, I was trying to just depict that it still can very often devolve. And the problem is if you're vulnerable and you just came out with all that, and then I'm not meeting that vulnerability with empathy.
Right. And that's honestly, that's an issue that we've run into.
Yeah.
Where then it's one thing when someone's defensive when you accuse them. Like if you're like, you ignored me, and they're like, well, that's not my problem. It hurts a little less than I'm feeling very sad and insecure, and they're still like, well, that's not my problem. So we kind of figured out.
It hurts a lot less. Like it hurts way more to be vulnerable and then have that stomped on. You know?
Absolutely.
So I think that was a big risk that we saw with option number 2.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, when we were discussing how do we help people get around these landmines, that was one concern that I had was I don't know that it's good to let people know you should be more vulnerable with a narcissist because you might actually open yourself up to some emotional injury, and that's something that we've had to navigate together at times.
Yeah.
So we came up with naturally this little
You
tip.
came up with this amazing tip. Yeah.
Yeah, I figured out this interesting little workaround in our conversations, and it's something that we want to give to you as a little tip that might make this transition into vulnerability a little smoother. And that's what I call setting the stage for the conversation. So what I do to set the stage for a conversation, when I know that I would like to express an emotion, and I'm pretty sure that that emotion is not going to be received very well or empathetically, I'll usually communicate to him that I'm planning on needing to share some emotion with him, but that I need him to be really soft and gentle and empathetic. So I'm almost putting his mindset in the space of, oh, I need to go into this with empathy, non-defensiveness, and an open heart. Because I think a lot of times what happens is that the shame response is so automatic that no matter what you say and how you say it, if they're not warned that it's coming, that you're almost always going to get a defensive response. And that's been our experience.
Yeah. And like, it's really hard to be able to do the non-narcissistic, what feels like magic when I'm not prepared to do it. You know, I say all the time, and it feels like oftentimes when I'm acting from my narcissism, I realize it way too late, after I've already hurt your feelings, after I've already gotten mad.
Yeah.
And that it's to me, it feels like waking up on a horse. Like I'm waking up and like bucking. I'm like, what's happening? And you know, all of a sudden realize, oh, I'm enraged right now, or I'm not being empathetic. And so prepping it to say, you're about to potentially get on a horse, you know, don't get on the horse here. Setting the stage is super helpful. Should we just show them how you do it?
Yeah, I think we should act it out.
Okay.
So
I'm driving. Me.
Hey, babe.
Yeah.
I kind of want to tell you some really vulnerable feelings I'm having about the party tonight.
Okay.
But I'm feeling really nervous that if I do, I'll accidentally hurt your feelings or cause you to feel defensive.
Oh.
Because I'm feeling so vulnerable and nervous about this, I just need you to know that before I can tell you what I'm feeling, I need to know that you're ready to be super soft and empathetic and be able to listen to me with an open heart before getting defensive. Maybe now's not a good time for that, but either could we talk about it now in that headspace, or can you let me know when you are in that headspace so that we can have this conversation? It would mean a lot to me.
Yeah. I think at that moment, you know, well, I'll just keep going. I actually feel really good right now. I don't feel any feelings, and thank you for warning me. Hand it to me. What's going on, babe?
So coming out of the party, I can tell you're feeling really energized and happy, but I'm noticing I'm actually feeling really sad.
What happened?
I think that I feel really loved by you when we get to interact a lot in parties, and I feel like we're on each other's arm the whole time and connecting. And when I notice you're really busy talking with other people at the party, I start to feel really insecure. I start to feel really nervous that we're not connected. Sometimes my heartbeat will race and I feel abandoned or ignored. And I'm not assuming that you're intending to do that. I know you're just living your best life, enjoying the party. But I think I'm needing to reconnect with you and just know that you love me, and wondering if we could try and figure out a way where when we go to parties together, we can stay by each other's side, or we can know a way to communicate when maybe one of us has been off with other people for too long, so that one of us doesn't feel left out or that ignored feeling that can come up when that happens.
Yeah. Oh, baby, I'm really sorry. And then insert the empathetic response. And what was interesting is I was imagining how I would have, because this happens a lot with us.
We've had this exact fight. I get very stressed at parties. I'm like, don't leave me.
But it was funny, even as we were pretending, I know what I would have been doing. In that moment, my brain is going, okay, listen, be empathetic. Listen to what she's saying. Because we've talked so much about this where she's like, I need you to be empathetic. I need you to feel like I need your help carrying these emotions, please. And I'm like, okay, let me learn, let me practice. And obviously we did not get there day one. It took us a long time for me to be willing. But now, as she's talking, I'm very consciously trying to be noticing like my emotions, and sometimes they will kind of like flare up and I just have to sit with them. Or sometimes I'll be like, hey, I'm getting a little bit worked up. Actually, there's one more thing we wanted to showcase. Maybe let's
yeah,
play
that's a good
out.
Transition into it. Let's explain what you were going to explain.
Yeah, so the last thing we want to say is, if she's giving me the warning and I still tend to spiral out, we call it, like, we don't have a name for it, but we thought to call it pause the rodeo. Like, just pause the show for a second. And if I do start to, and it can be very subtle, where I'm like, well, I guess I'm just the worst then, or some snide, sarcastic comment. If I say something like that, she will immediately say,
yeah. So at this point, you might still warn them, and they might still get defensive. And I will never continue a conversation where there's defensiveness.
Yeah.
So that's a boundary. And that's something really important, I think, for partners of narcissists, is to know that even with all of your efforts to be warn them to be vulnerable and empathetic and not make any accusations, they still might struggle to hold space for your emotions. And at that point, you are not obligated to continue trying to explain yourself or to push through the conversation if it's an unsafe place for you and your vulnerability. So a pause looks like something like this. Oh, babe, I can feel that maybe you have some frustration or even some defensiveness coming up. I'm not really sure what you're feeling, but I'm not sensing that we're able to be open-hearted with each other. And I'm not ready to have this conversation until I can feel that we're both fully open-hearted and gentle and safe. I'm not feeling safe, so I would like to take a break and come back to the conversation whenever you're ready to meet me in that energy.
Yeah. Yeah, and that can hurt a little bit, but I oftentimes, because again, I'm waking up on the horse, I'm waking up like, whoa, I'm acting that way. I'll be like, oh, whoa, you're right. And I'll either say, no, you're right. I shouldn't have made that comment. Let's keep talking right now. Or maybe I am really heated and I'm like, okay, I'll come back.
Yeah.
And the important part is that it's my job to come back to her. It's my job to come back and say, hey, I'm ready again. Let me go just take a quick walk. I'll be right back. 5 minutes. I always tell her how long, but it's my job to reschedule and get back on track with the emotion. Yeah. And your narcissist doesn't want to do that. Your narcissist wants to like run from it because it creates shame in them. I made her feel bad. I'm a bad partner. It's like my whole life I have pushed these things out of my mind and try to forget about them. And so, we have had this happen where I just go to bed and the next morning you're like, I feel hurt that we didn't finish that up, and it became the rules of our relationship that, I had to, come back to it. But, and I've always come back. And maybe sometimes I forgot, or I thought it was covered and my brain tricked myself into saying it's covered. Let's leave it alone. And you're like, no, it's not. Like, we still need to talk about this. But if your partner is not willing to reconnect, to reestablish connection and to hear you all the way out, it can be bumpy. You can have reminders, but if they're just like, you're too sensitive, I shouldn't have to listen to this. I'm not your parent. This isn't my job. I'm not in charge of your emotions. If that's what you're getting over and over again from the narcissist, it's a huge red flag, because essentially what's being communicated is that her needs don't matter, that she can never communicate any sadness, any single feeling ever. And that's a horrible relationship to be in, So they're not going to get it perfect the first time, give it a few tries. But if they're continually unable and unwilling to make your emotions important, man, it's a huge red flag. And I would really struggle recommending that someone try to stay in that relationship.
Yeah, I think the point here being that we're trying to walk the line between providing tools for people where you can create healthier patterns while not enabling patterns that are clearly unhealthy, right? And that's where it's out of our scope of practice. We're not therapists, so definitely take these deeper issues in with a therapist. But I wanted to make one more little comment, which is that one way I think that with the pause situation, you can buffer a little bit is to try and reestablish safety by letting your narcissistic partner know that their emotions are okay. Yeah. And what that looks like is if I say, I can tell you're feeling a little frustrated in the conversation, it's okay that you're frustrated. It's just that I cannot hold space for that frustration right now because of my vulnerability. And I need a kind of a less emotionally charged place to express my vulnerability. But I'm okay that we need to take a break. Yeah. And that's one of the things that I've had to learn because I can be a little bit anxiously attached. And so sometimes space is really hard for me. And I know a lot of people can resonate with that. A pause can feel like a million years. And I've made the mistake of almost making him feel bad that we've needed to pause by being like, okay, let's take a break, but I'm not happy about it and I'm really overwhelmed. And that's where I've needed to learn how to be my own primary caregiver for my emotions in the same way I'm expecting him to be. And this is where we can model healthy behaviors to each other through example. Because if I'm saying, hey, I need a pause, in that pause, not only are you asking them to self-regulate, you're also self-regulating, right? You're saying, I'm going to tend to my vulnerability that is not able to be heard. And I'm tending to all the parts of me that are frustrated that they can't be heard right now. That way you can create a mutually safe space, because I think that, and we both agree, that it perpetuates the narcissistic dynamic when we shame them for where they're at, or we make them feel like unlovable to us because of how they are unable to show up in certain situations. And so it's a bit of a, both people are taking full responsibility for their own emotional states and becoming the secondary caregivers to each other. Yeah. And what a secondary caregiver looks like is that you're still kind, you're still concerned and compassionate, but you're not saying, oh, this is my responsibility. So his angry defensive reaction to my emotion is not my responsibility, but I can still be concerned for his well-being. And I think that we can model that behavior to narcissistic partners if we're more securely attached, more secure in ourselves, or more capable of managing our emotions in conflict. We're not responsible for making them better or fixing them, but we can definitely model that behavior. And you've said to me a lot after conflict, once you've had some time to sit down and think about things, you'll say, you made me feel really safe when you said that it was okay that I felt shame and felt angry, and I think that helps you to break through to the other side where you can come back willing to listen because you don't feel judgment from me.
Yeah.
If I'm judgmental of you when you're trying to hold space for me, it no longer is a safe place for either of us to be vulnerable.
Yeah. Yeah. The narcissist is very quick to feel like they're not enough and that they are just the worst thing in the world. And so if you can just always, and it was hard because I came from a really narcissistic family where it wasn't okay. Yeah. My emotions were never okay, Yeah. And so, but you were just always so good. I almost didn't believe you when you'd be like, it's okay that you're feeling something right now. And I can go hold myself for a minute. I'd really love you to come back because I want us to be close, And I just remember thinking, no, it's not okay. I have to read between the lines and I have to be okay right now. And you'd really have modeled just amazing emotional behavior and self-regulation. So, I appreciate that.
It's that performative piece, the need to perform as capable and having your shit together and almost the grandiose, like, well, I don't have any problems or insecurities. That's a defense mechanism. But underneath that, if you think that your narcissistic partner is not feeling insecure, even if they're acting like they're not feeling insecure, they are. Yeah. And we've gotten to a place where you can be tender like this, but you weren't like that when we first met. Totally. You were like, I don't feel anything. I don't feel bad. I don't feel sad. All I feel is great and on top of the world. And I remember,
was a redneck too. It was great.
Yeah, in that twangy way I just showed was exactly how he was. And it took a lot of deconstructing to get to the soft, vulnerable parts, but you didn't allow that to come up until I had displayed over and over again.
It was safe.
That I didn't need you to be grandiose and performative.
Yeah. It was okay for me to be a fuck up, a mess, a problem, and have my own emotions.
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, I think this is everything we want to cover. Amazing stuff in there. And if there's any stuff that you all want us to cover on a different video, let us know in the comments. We'd love to be helpful. Okay. See ya.